Welcome to today's live Tech Talk Microsoft Licensing Essentials, choosing between MCA and EA. This event was organized by the hardworking folks at Redmond Magazine, and it's sponsored by US Cloud, the world's only independent third party provider of a full replacement for Microsoft Premier and Unified Support. I'm John K. Waters, editor in chief of the Converge 360 Group, and I'm joined today by Mike Jones, our enterprise software expert. So, choosing the licensing agreement is crucial for managing your organization's technology needs effectively. Microsoft offers a variety of licensing options, each designed to cater to different business sizes, structures, and requirements. Two of the most popular options are the Microsoft Customer Agreement, the MCA, and the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, EA. Without both MCA and EA, they both provide access to Microsoft's powerful suite of products and services, but they differ significantly in terms of structure, flexibility, and the overall impact on your organization's support costs. Understanding these differences is essential for making an informed decision that aligns with your business goals and budget constraints, to say the least. So, Mike, can you briefly explain the primary difference between MCA and EA?
Yeah, there's many different licensing models with Microsoft, so I'll start with that. So, the two that we're choosing to focus on today are obviously the enterprise agreement and the Microsoft customer agreements, or known as EA or MCA. And really, why we focus in on those two is really been a big push. EAs are very commonly known, I would say, in the Microsoft landscape. MCAs introduced in 2019 are really catching a lot of steam, both from a customer aspect, but also the partner ecosystem. In reality, when you look at these two, an EA essentially is really designed around organizations with 500 more users and or devices, 250 if you're government, if you're in the public sector. That is a minimum requirement. With an EA, there are essentially standard volume discounts. Those discounts can increase or decrease based on the number of licenses that you purchase. So the pricing is generally in a tiered structure model with an EA, meaning the more you purchase, the lower your cost per license. You get additional discounts in the negotiation period with enterprise agreements that can be structured around whether you're looking at multi-year agreements or not. There are other factors such as Azure consumption, because they're very, very focused on Azure commit and consumption from their product stack. EAs are kind of have been there for a long time. Customers are familiar with those, but they're really tailored towards the larger organizations. MCAs, or Microsoft Customer Agreements, really are kind of a newer thing in the Microsoft licensing ecosystem, where was originated for smaller organizations that are looking for a more flexible subscription based model, or pay as you go, or pay monthly model. So it was really tailored with its creation around the CSP, or cloud solution provider ecosystem. So this is where Microsoft has shifted a lot of the management, the relationship down to the partner level. And these VARs or resellers or partners now can sell licensing to the customer directly and own that whole relationship, if you will, from licensing transactions, so transactional relationship, to a more advisory consultant level, and even provide some level of support based into that support structure. But essentially, there's going to be discounts available based on your total spend, the product mix that you're putting into this agreement, and your agreement terms. Again, it can be a monthly pay as you go or subscription model, but there's also MCAE, or Microsoft Customer Agreement Enterprise, which is the direct to Microsoft agreement that you can also purchase, which can have a 1 or a 3-year commitment to it as well. Those are really the key differences, I think, between the two, just off the top.
So, EA is not for small to mid-sized businesses.
No, in fact, I will say it's not created with small to mid-sized businesses in mind. It really was created for the larger organizations. Something that I believe I read recently from Directions on Microsoft, which is a one of the prominent experts on the Microsoft roadmap and Microsoft licensing products. Essentially wrote an article not too long ago around, what is it about? Microsoft wants to keep their core business for the EA around large organizations and sell direct to the large, but have the partner then handle all small to mid-sized businesses.
How about flexibility? Talk about the differences or compare, you know,
Yep.
with around the commitment required specifically.
So it's really simple when you look at an EA versus an MCA. An EA is simply put, think of it from it's ideal for those organizations that are large in nature, that they are looking for a long term commitment because an EA is a 3-year commitment out of the gate. So you're already looking at, a longer term predictive cost based agreement. I do see large enterprises, though, just to throw that out, have a mixture of MCAs and EAs. It really just depends on the structure and what the need is. Whereas if you flip back to an MCA, it's designed for that flexible experience. There's no minimum user commitment like an EA. Again, with that 500 or 250 if you're Gov user devices, there's no minimum user requirement, and it gives customers the ability to purchase Microsoft products and services directly either from a partner through the CSP model, as I talked about, or directly to Microsoft with the MCAE version without a long-term commitment. So that's where your flexibility really starts. Now, to dig in a little deeper, MCAs are really optimized for cloud services. And what I mean by cloud services is Microsoft Azure, Microsoft 365, and Dynamics 365. Another feature around the MCA is there, again, it's monthly billing. You have self service management. Unlike your EA, it's much more intuitive from an administrative capability standpoint, where you can manage your own subscriptions and services through a self service portal versus an EA. Another reason I think Microsoft is urging customers to push into an MCA is because the systems on the back end for Microsoft that are managing EAs are they'll call them legacy, and that's putting it lightly. They're very older systems that they're trying to migrate users off of gently so that they can go to this more modern web-based self-service approach like MCAs provide as they're migrating users. So they started with, kind of small businesses into the MCA. Now they're kind of moving into the mid-sized market. And you'll start to see, how they're going to handle the large organizations because they're a little bit more complex as time goes on. Another key difference between the EA and the MCA and flexibility standpoint is with an EA, you're kind of locked in. You've made a commitment for that licensing. There are what they call true up, but there's not really true down. So keep that in mind when you're looking at an EA. You can true up. So if you decide to add licensing or software products in that, let's say year 1 of year 3, there's what's called the true up period before year 2, where you pay the piper. They're going to look at what you committed to originally. They're going to look at the deltas between that, and you're going to have to pay the difference towards that. Whereas with the MCA, I can go up, go down in my licensing products because it really is a monthly or pay as you go or subscription model.
How do the licensing costs differ between MCA and EA, and what factors influence these costs?
So an MCA is a essentially a ongoing contract that is subscription model that you can add, subtract products as you see fit. And it changes from, essentially a yearly commitment upfront model to a monthly pay as you go model. So it's much more flexible in the payment terms. Now, if we're talking about discounts, there's a lot of different things that go into that. One of the big ones I will throw out is a MAC, or what's called a Microsoft Azure consumption commit. And those are really put on EAs and MCAs as well. They're only available for EAs and MCAs. I believe, and we've heard a lot of kind of hallway talk that Microsoft's going to only allow Macs on MCAs moving forward and not EAs. And this is another nudge from Microsoft to try and push customers into that model. One, it's a simpler model for them. It's a more updated licensing platform on their backend systems, for one. Two, it's much more easier to manage and monitor. EAs, there's multiple contracts, there's hundreds of documents of pages that you have to go through and redline from a legal standpoint. I'm sure everyone's been through that before. MCAs, it's like 11 pages. It's a very simple, simple contractual agreement. Again, it's more of a subscription-based model. There's a lot less downtime or negotiating time to turn up an MCA versus it is to activate an EA for a customer. So there's a lot of benefits on both sides for customers. And discounts kind of follow within that, and they're all negotiable.
In your experience, what are the common mistakes that businesses make when they're selecting one of these agreements, and how can they avoid those mistakes?
Well, one thing I'll throw out there is MCAs, even though they seem very simplistic from an administrative standpoint, from a legal agreement standpoint, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's less complex in nature, because there's a lot of different ways that you can purchase cloud products. As I said, I think there's like 16 different agreement types that I know of today that exist in the Microsoft ecosystem. There's potential discounts that you need to be on the lookout for. So it doesn't mean it's less complex. It's just easier to manage, I think, from beginning to end. In my professional opinion, MCAs seem to be a little bit more simpler approach for customers that are looking to get in from that standpoint.
Man, let's talk a little bit more about costs. How does the inclusion of software awareness affect support costs under both MCA and EA?
So the big thing to know, which I'm sure most customers know, is February 1 of 2023, software assurance benefits for support ended. That was kind of the last step in what they called SABs, or software assurance benefits. So that's a thing of the past. Software assurance is gone. So essentially, what's left? What Microsoft did is they eliminated software assurance benefits because what one of the final parts or components of SABs was it included base support. Now, with Microsoft moving to the unified model, they eliminated software assurance benefits because they want to replace it with a standalone support agreement.
How about support costs? Do they vary widely between MCA and EA?
Simply put, no, it does not impact the difference between going with an MCA or an EA. It has to do with what support contract you have behind that. Is it unified? Is it a CSP providing some level of support? Is it a third party like US Cloud, where we provide you a full like for like replacement from a support contract standpoint? You've
Mm,
got your EA and licensing purchase. You've got your support. Yes, there are many options on the support. There's much fewer on an MCA or an EA. You've got Microsoft proper. You can go direct to Microsoft, or you can go through like a licensing solution provider, or you can go through a partner in this newer CSP model and purchase through them. That's really your only options over there. Outside of that, on the support side, the market's very different with the CSP model. They're providing usually base level support on all the products they sell. They are required by Microsoft to provide level one and level two on the products that they sell their customers. So a CSP sells to a customer doesn't go direct to Microsoft anymore. They go through the partner, and the partner provides that base level support and then escalates to Microsoft for the customer should they be unable to resolve it.
okay. How about hidden costs, or I don't know, potential pitfalls that businesses should be aware of when they're choosing the MCA or EA?
Well, one big thing that happened recently that would impact customers looking at these options is there used to be what they called a preliminary period, where if a customer signed an EA or an MCA or one of their other agreements like an SCE, which is server cloud enrollment, or they were doing an EES, which is enrollment for education solutions agreement, they essentially they bundled on essentially standard support on the EA purchase or this agreement. When you purchase this, it's almost like the old software assurance benefits, where they tapped in and said, we'll give you standard support for these products. But what a lot of customers didn't understand is that was only a probationary period. So customers that bought that, when they signed or renewed an agreement, between, I think it was July 1st of 2023 and June 30th of this year, received built-in support, or what I call EA or tenant-based support. So they could go directly to Microsoft, and that was adequate for a support agreement for a lot of cloud. This is cloud products. Well, June 30th, Microsoft pulled that offer. So customers who purchase Azure services starting July 1, they got that standard support at no charge for a 6-month period. And then after that 6-month period, they essentially had to have a support contract on the back end. So it really shook, I think, a lot of people because they weren't aware that this was only a temporary offer. And so customers are really kind of scrambling now since June 30th because their Azure support ran out. What do you have to take in consideration now? Well, now you've got to look at a unified support agreement, a third party support option, or you can purchase essentially Azure Pro Direct through Microsoft directly as a monthly subscription model.
How about the contract renewal process? What's the difference between the MCA and EA?
The MCA is really, when it comes down to the flexibility that I talked about earlier, it's a think of it as a monthly subscription model. You pay as you go with monthly invoices. It's a simplified purchasing and billing process. Like when you look at I was looking at some numbers. There were some numbers around like how long does it take to essentially negotiate an MCA and get it live and active versus an EA. It was a very big difference between the two. I mean, we're talking a matter of you could do it in a week with an MCA, whereas an EA was a month and a half. So much different negotiation, activation times very significantly because again, their back end systems for the EA are very legacy. They're very older. So the provisioning time for an EA takes a lot longer than it does for an MCA. And in MCA, there's not a lot of cost variability. If you know you're about to adopt a new technology, the MCA provides you with the flexibility of adding those licenses when you really need them. The EA, again, long-term commitment. It's a 3-year out of the box. So it's a significant upfront payment. So you got to come in with your team of negotiators. You got to do that on a regular basis every 3 years or more if you do a longer term.
How does Microsoft support structure change under each agreement?
It doesn't. So simply put, as we kind of talked about, it doesn't. The support structure doesn't change. So there's a lot of noise I hear out there from time to time that whether they hear it from someone inside the industry, someone outside, where they'll say, well, support, if I buy unified, I get this level of support. But if I buy through a partner or CSP, I get this level of support. And the reality is that is complete FUD. That is not true. There's one support team at Microsoft, and that's the unified support team. I don't care if you're a partner or you're a customer. When you work with Microsoft, you're working with that one organization. It's not siloed, it's not segregated. You've got the same quality or service or engineers that you would have either being a customer or a partner. As far as quality, they're not going to associate an EA customer to this level of support when they buy a contract over here, because again, they're separate, or an MCA customer. It makes it's 6 half dozen. The only caveat to the MCA, as I briefly spoke about earlier, is you can do what's called an MCAE, which is working directly with Microsoft on that MCA agreement. You can do 1 and 3 year with that. To me, makes no sense to do a 3-year MCA. You might as well go an EA and get the bigger discount slices than doing a 3-year MCA, because again, that's the whole point of an MCA. It's flexible. You can go up, down as you see fit without having to commit long term on those products.
Okay, we haven't talked at all about US Cloud, and I'd like to do that now. Can you explain how the support services offered by US Cloud complement Microsoft's licensing agreement?
Yeah, again, it's agnostic. Your support provider is agnostic for the most part to what licensing structure you purchase. There are caveats to that. CSPs, as an example, CSP providers, they essentially will support the products that you purchase from them. Again, they're only required by Microsoft contractually to provide level one and level two. So almost think of it as help desk style services as support to those products that they sell to customers. So a lot of partners, what they'll end up doing is they'll have a very skeleton crew of help desk, and you'll call in and they'll immediately escalate it to Microsoft and they'll just flip it over the fence to Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't like that too much because they're really trying to rely on their partners to have expertise to resolve a majority of those cases in house before bugging Big Brother, if you will, or having to go to them to have them resolve it. One of our value adds is we staff high level engineering resources, L2 to L4. We don't staff L1. We are enterprise support. We are not an end user help desk service. So we are there to provide support, high end support for those enterprise level customers that are on those products that affect their entire organization. So that's really where I think a lot of value in our customers. We have 520 plus customers today using the service, get a lot of value in that. On top of that, we structure our model for support from a 24/7, 365 approach. And we're US based. We do service a lot of international and global customers, but we are US based. So we also work a lot with the federal government and government contractors as well to provide that guaranteed US based citizen support that they need. So there's my 30-second elevator pitch for you.
Okay, well, then let's talk more sort of generically, he tried to say. What are the advantages of a third party like US Cloud managing support services in conjunction with MCA and EA?
So with MCA, you'll know if you ever deal with a CSP, anyone that can sell licensing provider, the very first thing you sign digitally is an MCA. CSPs cannot, that is what they sell. CSPs sell MCA. There are CSPs that can provide customers with that flexible option to do that. And we encourage customers to look at that. If nothing else, take a look at an MCA through a CSP provider versus doing a direct EA with Microsoft or an MCAE even with Microsoft and see where the benefits come. Because again, a lot of it's not just the straight up front up pricing, but I'm bundling in all of these types of consultative services and offerings and trainings. That value might teeter a little bit. It's really up to the customer to decide if that's a value to them. But knowing that, looking back with an MCA and an EA to customers, I always tell them up front, do you have predictive cost? Are you linear? If you're large in shape, as far as organization's number and volume of licenses, are you fairly flat? Are you looking to do a move from AWS to Azure, where it's going to significantly change your infrastructure products that you're leveraging in the cloud? I might take a second look at that. Your provider will do, if not all, most of the heavy lifting for you. But another thing is length of contract. Again, do you have the capital from an expense to pay up front? EAs, which most large organizations do. Then an upfront EA might be the best fit for you because you will get more discounts than you would on an MCA. But if you're a small medium business, it's almost a moot point. If you're a small business, you don't even have access to an EA, an MCA, or through a CSP is a great model for you because it can enhance your already internal IT resources by leveraging the partner for additional things other than just licensing. If you have a very mature help desk, then maybe an EA is a better fit for you where you don't leverage a lot of consultation or a lot of project-based services through a partner or a reseller or through Microsoft directly. But if an MCA, if those types of options are advantageous to you, looking at a CSP model is a really good, you're still going to get discounts. Don't look at it as a pure, what's my discount here versus here? Because remember, with an EA, they're going to try and get you to buy all of this licensing up front.
Let's get to some questions from our attendees. What factors should organizations consider when evaluating the cost effectiveness of each licensing model?
So you got to look at the commitment structure. So are are you needing flexible options for your licensing as your organization changes, that growing, reducing? Are you looking at new product sets, but not immediately? Are you looking at them over, a 6 to 18 month period? I would probably nudge you towards the MCA version to look at that, and you're only buying for what you need. Do you need flexibility in your finances? From a capital cost. Are you able to purchase, potentially a $1 million EA upfront and pay for that upfront? Or do you need flexibility where you're breaking them into almost a subscription or OpEx model where it's monthly based invoicing and you're paying monthly? There's a lot of ups and downs with companies today from a financial standpoint. Are they sitting on cash reserves? Are they wanting to maintain those cash reserve? Then MCA is a good option for you, versus an EA. As far as my biggest kind of gotchas on whether you're analyzing that, remember, if you're not at least 500 users and or devices, an EA is not an option for you to begin with. Your best bet is to go through a CSP provider, a partner, and negotiate and look at your different options in the CSP space.
Does Microsoft have a site where we can add the products or SKUs that we need and it tells what license bundle is most economical for us to use? And David asks, is there a sizing tool for the MCA to compare to an EA?
If you purchase an MCA, there is a self-service where you can manage your own subscriptions and services through this self-service portal. You can do SKU lookups as far as products that you want to add on your own. So it gives you the complete autonomy to administer and control that. You have to know what you're looking for, though. That's the key. You need to know what products you're potentially doing, which kind of goes into the next question that was asked, where there isn't just one site that you can go to where you can do a calculator or run this and say, here's your best option. There's nothing like that. Going to a third party consultant or analyst that focuses on licensing and agreement negotiations with Microsoft, specifically Directions on Microsoft or DOM, is a great resource. Infotech is also a fantastic resource. If you don't have relationships with either one of them, I would encourage you to reach out and start those conversations with them. They are experts on Microsoft agreements. They are experts on looking at what licensing SKUs have the best discounts that fit you into this tier and that tier. It's a very complex area to dabble in. It could be a full-time job just to focus on the different Microsoft licensing options and how they're priced and discounted. It is a full-time thing.
And is there like a tool that they can buy to, a sizing tool, or is it just is the best place to go to the self-service website?
So that's if you already are an MCA customer. So if you buy that agreement, you get access to the portal. If you are a customer that is not in that and you're looking towards that, that's the route of the analyst route. A trusted partner can provide you with the level of detail that you would want. There's not really a website calculator. There's nothing simple off the top. And if there is one out there, I would avoid it because it's just not going to provide the level of detail.
Can we convert existing EA to MCA? If yes, will that impact anything?
Essentially, you're shifting that model, those IDs, if you will, from an EA contract over to a different format, essentially through a CSP model or a different agreement. So there's a transfer of that over. So you definitely want to take in consideration some of the steps with your partner and talk through, what do we have to do? What type of responsibilities do I have as the customer? What are you, the partner, providing as far as the transfer of that and the setup of all of those services? But don't forget, the majority of that burden will be on the partner that is selling you that licensing. They should be handling the majority of that legwork, providing you with the steps and saying, here's how this is going to happen. Here are the things that we need from you, Mr. Customer, so that we can make sure there's a smooth transition over to your MCA agreement.
Do you work with MSPs to provide service?
So we provide just support services. So our support is similar to like a unified contract. So we provide the reactive 24/7 break fix support. We provide proactive services, so project based, so like migrations, implementations, workshops, trainings, and we provide consultants, which is very similar to Microsoft's dedicated support engineer, or what they call enhanced designated engineers now, or EDEs. We have consultants. So we work with partners to be their support arm of that CSP model for them, because they don't have the staff to support from an enterprise level those high level customers. So they'll sell them the licensing, but we're their partner for the support side of that component.
I want to thank Mike Jones for joining me on this informative conversation, and many, many, many thanks to US Cloud for making this conversation possible. We couldn't have done it without them. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.